Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about degrees in astrology. Now, many of you may know that I've done some videos pertaining to degrees in astrology. I had one on the analytic degree, the 29th degree, early degrees. I had one on critical degrees, but this one is going to incorporate those, and I'm going to add something else to it that I haven't had before, and you'll see what it is as this video progresses. Now, as far as the critical degrees go, many of you may know that as far as mutable, it's considered the 4th and 17th degrees, and as far as cardinal goes, it's 0, 13, 26, and as far as the fixed signs go, it's like 8, 9, 21, 22. So, and when they say critical degrees, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to affect somebody adversely, or something critical, something detrimental is going to happen to this person because of perhaps having the sun, moon, or ascendant, maybe even personal planets in those degrees. It's a point of significance. I think it can indicate maybe a greater propensity for notoriety, for fame. Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may not be, but it's an accentuating or emphasized thing when you have a perhaps sun, moon, ascendant in one of these degrees, and perhaps even another personal planet which wouldn't be the sun, moon, or ascendant, such as Venus, Mars, or Mercury. But I think it figures strongly as far as the sun, moon, and ascendant goes. Now, 0 and 29 degrees, those are often perceived as critical degrees as well. They could be points of a crisis, of upheaval, of ambivalence, ambiguity, and especially I think a lot of it has to do with being on the cusp of one sign and another. Definitely plays a role in this. Now, if we look at some of the another thing to look at when you look at these critical degrees, there's some other degrees that I would, or I should say not other degrees, but there's another thing pertaining to degrees that I wanted to get at that I didn't include in the other videos. Now, this was based on one reading, so I don't know how much credence can be put into this, but I read, and it was an astrology magazine, early 2000s, that if somebody was to have a degree in an early, or degree in an early degree, sun, moon, or ascendant, I would say presumably, I don't remember what they said, what planet or influence they were referring to specifically, but I would think it would be the sun, moon, or ascendant. That if it's in an very early degree, or early degree, that the person is apt to be wanting to get things done quick, and more apt to be punctual and be timely for things. And if it was in, say, a late degree, it would be more somebody that would be connected with procrastination, or have propensity to be late for things. Now, what I think, my theory is this. Now, assuming that this may be correct, what I would do maybe to ascertain, well, is your chart more of an indicator for somebody that's timely, or somebody that tends to be late for things? And the thing is, I would take the sun, moon, and ascendant and look at those degrees, add them up, and divide by 3. And if the number comes to less than 15, then it would be more like, it would seem like it would lean more toward being somebody that would be more timely for things. And if you look at, and if the number comes to a number between, say, 15 and, I guess you would say 15 degrees, 0 minutes of arc, and 29 degrees, 59 minutes of arc, that would be somebody that would presumably be more inclined to be late for things and be more of a procrastinator and kind of like one of those people that just run around frantically at the last minute trying to accomplish their tasks. Now, but I thought that was interesting. I think it may hold some truth because I know somebody that figured prominently in my life some time ago had Cancer rising at 29 degrees. And it seemed like she was just like notoriously just late on things and trying to get everything done all at once. Cleaning around the house might have been late, and it seemed like she was running around trying to get everything done at the last minute a lot, and I wonder if that might have had something to do with that. And also her sun sign and her moon sign were all the moon sign was like 26 degrees and the sun sign I think was like 18 degrees. So all three of those main proponents, sun, moon, and ascendant, were all well beyond 15 degrees. So it just kind of, I think that could be an indicator of somebody, whether they're going to be more tardy, whether they're going to be punctual, timely, reliable, dependable, whether they're going to wind up being early for things, take the initiative, be at a meeting or an interview, say 5 minutes early as opposed to being 5 or 10 minutes late. So those are things I think you could look at, but like I said, this was just based on one reading. I haven't seen anything online or any other source that would indicate this. You could I guess it's up to you whether you think that this may be true or not. You could look at your own sun, moon, ascendant and do what I had stated, add those three numbers up, and then divide by 3. And like I stated before, if that number comes to a number lower than 15, between 0 degrees and 14 degrees 59 minutes of arc, then it would be more of a propensity to be earlier with things. And then of course if it's between 15 degrees and 29 degrees 59 minutes of arc, then that average comes to that, then there'd be more the tendency or proclivity to be later with things. So based on that reading, and I think it may very well have some credence to it. And I think also in your chart, if you have preponderance of planets or majority of planets on the left side of the chart, in other words, in houses 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, and 3, that's more of a self-starting person and in somebody in about initiative and enterprise and doing things independently, which would lean, I think, more toward getting things done earlier as opposed to later. Person has majority or preponderance of planets on the right side of the chart. In other words, in houses 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, then you would see maybe that inclination to be a little bit later with things. So that's another thing to look at. But back to the degrees, the critical degrees, I have a friend that's in a fairly thriving, flourishing music band, and his sun sign is at 8 degrees Taurus. His Mercury is at 22 degrees Taurus, and that can indicate maybe something prominent for this person. And Taurus is a sign connected with the arts, and that doesn't include singing or music, and sure enough that's what he does. So I think that may have a little something to do with perhaps his success in this. I have 22 degrees Taurus rising, as many of you may know. Now, I'm very far from anybody connected with any great fame or fortune, but I have gotten certain exposure doing the videos, and popularity has increased in that slow, methodical Taurus fashion during the close to 2.5 years that I've been doing these videos. So maybe that has a little something to do with that. And anyway, these are things to look at. And the degrees also, as I stated in a previous video, there's a website. It's the Angel Fire website that has a very strong list a very extensive list of critical degrees on it, and there could be, you might want to check that website out. That's got a lot more than what I have stated in this video. I just went through the ones that I felt were the more popular, the ones that are talked about more frequently. So really, and as I stated, it's not, the critical degrees are not necessarily something that's going to be to someone's detriment. And also, if you look at something else I want to talk about degrees in astrology, if you look at, like, say, progress chart, and you have something at 0 degrees in a progress chart, it could indicate the beginning of something. It's not always good, not always bad. When my homeless plight began, my progressed ascendant was like at 0 to 1 degrees Cancer, and Cancer does rule the home, and I became Mr. Peripatetic, to say the least, during that period. And I've moved like 15 times during that span since the time it was at the beginning of Cancer. Now, let's say somebody has a progressed, say, ascendant, say it, or midheaven, for example, say at 29 degrees Taurus. Well, this could signify the end of some monetary period or some work-related period for this person. Something financial may come to an end, but that doesn't necessarily, if that's not something necessarily negative, because it could signify the beginning of something when it goes to 0 degrees Gemini. When it's in that transition, it could indicate something, a new beginning in connection with something with communication. So that's something to consider when you're looking at planets at 0 to 29 degrees. 29 degrees in a natal chart in Sun, Moon, or Ascendant can often, I see it where it can be the culmination of that sign, and you could be looking at, say, somebody has 29 degrees Scorpio, Sun, Moon, or Ascendant. Well, you might see a very strong full energy of this sign, and this person, for example, may have a very emphasized interest, say, in occult, supernatural, astrological subjects, be really intense interest maybe in those matters, or things connected with mysteries, investigation, getting to the bottom of things. And so that's something to consider. That person I told you about that had the 29 degrees Cancer rising, well, I mean, saying that family figured prominently in her life may be a vast understatement. I mean, she had very strong involvement with family in the home, and I mean, she also had, I believe, I think, like at least 2 planets in the 4th, maybe 3. She had 1 conjunct the 4th from the 3rd, so that definitely factored in as well. And she also had 2 other planets in Cancer, so she had Saturn and Mars in the zodiac sign Cancer as well. But I mean, and she showed that strong emotional, sensitive type of Cancerian outer personality, and it really was very, very strong. And I think even dominated her personality even more so than the average ascendant position would, because most of you know the ascendant often will dominate the personality anyway, at least as far as the outer characteristics and demeanor of the person. But I think this applied even more so because it was at that 29 or anaretic degree. So that is something to look at when you're looking at degrees in a natal chart. So, and I thought one more thing was interesting. I'm doing my Gemini moon ramble here, but there was something that I thought was of interest, and I don't know if how many of you are pro basketball aficionados or fans, but in 2004, many of you may have remembered that it was called the Malice at the Palace. It was when NBA star Ron Artest went into the stands because somebody had thrown a beer on him, and he just went ballistic. His Scorpio intensity, Sun and Scorpio intensity really came out, I think. But what I wanted to get at is I did a chart on that day, and I didn't know the exact time. I had to get an approximate time based on when it happened in the game, and factoring in how long an NBA game is on average. I think I had it like at 10:15 p.m. on that date. But anyway, when I calculated the chart, I had 29 degrees of Leo on the second house cusp. What I thought was intriguing about that was this. Now, at the time, now a lot of people, I believe, it may be seen as that fixed star, and I don't know if I'm remembering it correctly. I'm thinking it's Regulus. Was it 29 degrees Leo? It's like from what I've read, it's supposed to be like 0 degrees Virgo now. Now that's something that might be debatable with some people, but that's what I heard where it's at now. But at that time, I believe it was at 29 degrees Leo, and it could indicate somebody that has a fall from some kind of power. And second house is connected with income generated, with money. Now, Ron Artest, at least in that game, was like the dominant player. He was the most powerful person in that game, in that event, in that incident when he ran into the stands. Now, if I remember reading this right or researching this correctly, he lost a very good amount of money, and I believe he was suspended for the duration of the season. So it kind of seemed like it tied. It seems like there was some connection with that, perhaps with what happened with Ron Artest in that game, because he did in essence lose as far as power as a basketball person, because he was suspended for the duration of the season, and he was that dominant, like that. Even though he's not a Leo, Leo was on the cusp of that second house, and he was that dominant person in that game. And I guess you could say, in a way, he kind of fell from from his power. It was dissipated a little because he couldn't participate in any game for the rest of the season. And interestingly enough, that 29 degrees Leo fell on the second house cusp of money, so he lost a lot of money because of that prodigious suspension he had. So I thought that was kind of interesting point to look at. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment on degrees in a natal and in astrology in general. And stay tuned next time, where I will be continuing my series on duplicated houses in a natal chart. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel, but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because a person astrologically is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.